This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Okay, listen up folks, time for a new edition of the Possibility Club. What a treat. And in today's podcast, we're going to be diving into the textured world of style and substance, where creativity meets a profound sense of purpose. How do our expressions of style reflect broader cultural, economic and personal shifts? How does the aesthetic we choose broadcast our identities and our values to the world? In this episode, we're going on a little journey to the life and legacy of a pioneer who's been shaping the public personas of icons across the globe, with nothing but a pair of scissors and a flair for transformation. From the smoky backstages of high-octane fashion shows to the glossy pages of Vogue, my special guest this episode has navigated the ever-evolving landscapes of beauty and celebrity. But beyond the glitter, there's a deeper dialogue about the influence of aesthetics on our sense of self and society. How does what we see in the mirror reflect our cultural zeitgeist? What can the evolution of style tell us about the shifting social values and the ongoing dialogue between tradition and rebellion? Imagine a world where every curl, hue, cut tells a story not just of personal style, but of social, political transformation, of social mobility, of economic journeying, and of technological advancement. How does my guest view the interplay between the personal and the political when it comes to fashion? And how has the fashion industry adapted to the demands of sustainability and digital transformation? In exploring this, I'm not just untangling a personal history, but also a bit of cultural analysis. We'll discuss the intimacy of how the styling chair can sometimes turn into a confessional, a strategic planning session, or just plain therapy, revealing the trust and transformative power vested in the hands of those who sculpt our external selves. I'm Richard Freeman, this is the Possibility Club, and my special guest is responsible for iconic looks of Princess Diana, Lady Gaga, Kate Moss, and is the only hairstylist in history to have had a retrospective of their work and their influence on society at Somerset House in London. It's an extraordinary privilege to introduce you to Sam McKnight, MBE. Welcome to the Possibility Club. I'm your host, Richard Freeman, as always, delighted to have your ears for half an hour. Thank you for lending them. And as always, we're looking at themes of bravery and leadership and impact in business, in culture, in society. And I've got an extraordinary guest who I'm delighted to be talking with in this episode. The hairstylist's hairstylist. The list of clients is extraordinary, and I'm sure we'll delve into that. But actually, really what I'm interested in is his role as an entrepreneur, as someone who's kind of navigating the world of business and style to kind of create products and services that move and inspire. And let's explore all of that. So Sam McKnight, MBE, how the devil are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Where did it all start? Why and when was hair something that you thought could be a calling?
Oh, when I saw David Bowie on Top of the Pops in, I guess it must have been, early 70s. As soon as I saw David Bowie, I was hooked. And I was hooked to fashion, I guess, and style, and followed him and his haircuts through the decades. Because I'm from a coal mining village in southwest Scotland. So my dad was a coal miner and my mum worked in the co-op. It was late 60s, early 70s, and I'd been brought up with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all that kind of 60s stuff. But you didn't really feel that if you weren't in those. I mean, they say that there were only 200 people in the swinging sticks in London, don't they? And that's probably true. But we saw it all on telly and listened to it on the radio. And when David Bowie exploded in colour, that was the start of it for me. But I was at Teacher Training College in 73. I was very into glam rock. I mean, I had perms and all kinds of stuff in my hair. And my friends owned a hairdressing salon. We didn't have any money. So I was a window cleaner. I worked in a jeans factory. I worked in a sock factory. Yeah, a bit of pocket money, And went to Teacher Training College in 73. And I think I lasted 2 years and I absolutely hated it. I hated not earning money. And also I didn't like the that I was still in education. I didn't really want to be a teacher. And weirdly, my friends had a hairdressing salon, and I took a Saturday job there. And then very quickly, I had left college and started to train as a hairdresser. A couple of years later, moved to London and ended up working in one of the top salons, ended up working for shooting for Vogue very early on, actually 50 years ago, very soon. At that time, it was a very big risk, but I left the salon and decided I only wanted to do photo shoots. Now, not very many people did that back then because the industry was very, very, very tiny. It wasn't like it is now. And I remember everyone saying, "You are crazy. You will never make any money doing that." And I didn't for a while, but I was willing to take the risk. And I think for me, I've always taken risks, and that goes back to from being a teenager. I like to think I have carried that through into my 60s. I've always been a risk taker.
And where do you think that came from? You've set out this extraordinary story of social mobility, really, somebody from a background that's quite far removed from Vogue photo shoots to carving your way through that, taking those opportunities and kind of betting on yourself, I guess. Is that something intrinsic in you? Or
it probably comes from my background. Don't forget, that generation of the 60s was when social mobility became possible, really. When you look at the history and the story of someone like David Bailey, the photographer, Dave was an East End boy who ended up entering this world of, he'll tell you himself, posh birds and very upper class photographers. And he was the renegade. And I think you look at something like that and you think it's in the zeitgeist, isn't it? People like that made things possible. Not that it had never happened before, but it almost, and Twiggy and those kind of people before me opened doors. And I think in my time, it didn't feel like, you said something about carving your way through. It didn't feel like that to me. It felt like I wanted to do this and I'm going to give it a go. It was more opportunistic. It was more about seeing an opportunity and seeing something that I really liked doing and thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind trying to make a career of that. It was pretty brave to leave a very secure job in the salon at Moulton Brown, the best salon in London. Before it was Hand Wash, it was the top London salon in South Moulton Street. I mean, it was the shit. It was the place to be, And I left that in 1980 and to be by myself, just doing this thing called photo shoots, which there weren't very many. And 2 years later, I was in New York working for American Vogue. So it's about grasping those opportunities. I'm a bit of a chancer, they would say. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
But in terms of that, you talked about that kind of legacy, or certainly kind of measuring that success. You hoped that that's opened the doors to others. I mean, what are your reflections on the ability or capability of people like you were then to be able to do that now? Do you think it's harder?
I think it was easier for a while, but I think this side of the business has exploded so much because of social media. There's much more competition. There are thousands and thousands of people now, whereas before, when I started, there was probably 10 maximum. Then in the late 80s, early 90s, there were more, and it became a thing, and there were more magazines, there were more photo shoots, there were fashion shows became a thing, which weren't before. So of course the business grew. But I guess in the last 10 years or so, it's not just grown, it's exploded. Because when you're on a shoot now, whereas before you used to do a shoot and you spend a week doing 10 pictures. Now you do 30 pictures in a day, so, and there's just so many more demands. People try to get away with paying less money. It's changed a lot. I have got a bee in my bonnet about that in the moment because it's gone so big and so sort of it's exploded so quickly. In what I do in the fashion industry, there are no regulations and no boundaries for hair and makeup people. There's no protection like there is in the movie business. Mm-hmm. So basically people can take the piss, and they do, So I think that needs to change. So because of the explosion, I think it is harder to attract the attention, be heard above all the noise and be seen, for your work to be seen above all the noise. It is definitely, there's so many more ways of doing it now. There are much more opportunities now, but there are much more people going after those opportunities, you know?
Do you think your industry still kind of favors the brave? Does it still like originality and those that kind of cut through? Or has there been a kind of race to the bottom? You know, they want the cheapest.
There's definitely a bit of both. There's definitely originality still sought after, but so is cheap and or free. And there's a kind of, there needs to be a recalibration of the values put on what we bring. And this is not putting down makeup artists, but you have to train for years to be a hairdresser. Whereas people can go online and say they're a makeup artist without any training at all. And I'm not saying everyone does that, but it's a little more complex. And I think that's not taken into consideration a lot, you know?
You know, did you know anyone can call themselves an accountant? There's there's not even a professional.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously you can train to be an accountant, but there's no legal consequence if you call yourself one.
Actually, to understand and do hair really well, you need the experience of, you can't just turn up with a hairdryer and do it. You really need to have a flair for it and the experience of working it with your hands and feeling it, because it's a very alien material if you want to manipulate it, you know. And then there's the whole client hairdresser relationship, which is, you know, part psychologist, and that's tricky to negotiate. So there's a lot to be said for experience, but it's not just hair people. You see it across the board. Of journalists are the same. I know lots of my friends are journalists, and you know, they're expected to work for free. Their experience and what they bring to the table isn't valued like it used to be in general. So it's definitely of our times. What I hear a lot, and I absolutely detest it, I hear a kind of, oh, it's just the hair and makeup, you know, oh, they'll only be an hour, and that kind of thing. Well, how long are you going to take? Sometimes it takes a long time, and it's said in a kind of flippant kind of way. I even heard someone the other day turn up, some assistant turn up, oh, I'm just the hairdresser. Never refer to yourself as just the anything. If people are not respecting you and valuing you, you're not going to have that respect and value for yourself and what you do.
We do have that strangely embedded, I think, in a lot of particularly kind of UK culture about, you know, which jobs have value, which don't, which are worth, which don't. And, you know, the pandemic sort of highlighted some of that in quite stark relief. But you're right, it's across every sector. You are synonymous with styling Princess Diana, Lady Gaga, and people who are on the world stage, some of the most famous people in the world at the time that they were the most famous, and obviously their hair is part of them, you know, big part of their identity. When you measure your success, your kind of personal success, is it in the kind of process of creating that design, your relationship with those people, or is it actually at the end when you kind of step back and see just how much what you created is now part of mythology, it's now part of a kind of an era defining visual?
I think it's exactly what you just said. About 7 years ago, I was invited by Somerset House to do quite a big exhibition, a hair exhibition, which had never really been done before. And and we did a book at the same time of my work, of sort of 40 years work, 50 now, 40 years work. And going through, I think we went through about 40,000 images, which I'd never looked at before. They're all in plastic boxes in a storage unit, you know. And I was forced to kind of do a bit of This Is Your Life and to have it all go before my eyes. And it was an amazing experience. It was quite powerful and it really was powerful. It gave me power in myself that I hadn't really tapped into before, because I looked at it and was very happy with it in every way. I have met the most incredible people, and that's the thing I take away from it most. I've met the most wonderful people, from, you know, singers and actresses and incredible iconic photographers like Avedon Penn and Nick Knight, Bravery, Demarchelier. and get to work with amazing designers like Karl Lagerfeld, not designers, icons and phenomenons like Karl Lagerfeld, Vivienne Westwood, Dries Van Noten. The list is endless. And to see all that in front of me and the people that I've met, I mean, it was quite emotional because you form bonds with people very, very quickly. So the creative industries are very attached to emotions. Not only does music, fashion, and beauty bring in billions to this country, which is not recognized properly, they reach people's emotions. And your music and your makeup, whatever, your clothes, it sparks an emotion in people. And when you're working with people on a photo shoot, you're touching them.
This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible. But who are we?
Always Possible works with ambitious businesses, charities, and public services that are thinking about what's next.
From architects to aerospace companies, puppet theatres to primary schools, business networks to big data analysts.
If you're wanting to be brave with some big decisions or to be clearer about what to prioritise, then an award-winning workshop from the Always Possible team is a brilliant starting point.
We care about just one thing: building ideas that work.
For creative, intuitive, and practical expertise, consider Always Possible as your strategic partner. Find out more about how we could power up your mission. Visit alwayspossible.co.uk.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
This city.
This is a quick note to say that the Brighton Paradox will be back. Season 2 will be a shorter, tighter series looking at the energy, impatience and opportunity happening in post-pandemic Brighton and Hove. We're examining the landscape across the city in 2024, what's changing, what's building in economics, culture, community and technology. Why are people telling me that they are in fight or flight mode? What is the significance of a council with an overall majority? How is artificial intelligence maybe changing the way people solve problems in the city? And of course, how has a podcast changed the lives of Brighton's children? And it's not this one. All new interviewees and all new explorations of the city. But right now we're still gluing the jigsaw together, so you'll have to wait a little bit longer. But we are delighted to announce that we're being supported again by Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club, who return as brilliant headline sponsors and partners. And the University of Brighton's Help to Grow management programme also returns as a really valuable project partner. And in addition, we have 2 new supporters, the exceptional folk at EQ Investors and the legends at Midnight Communications, and we couldn't do this without all of these visionary people. Brilliant. Thank you. Take care. Speak soon.
So going through all these images, some people passed away, some people you haven't seen for 30 years, but I was forced to contact a lot of those people to get their permission for obviously not the ones that passed away. I didn't go to Medium, but I was forced to go and so got in touch with people. Do you know what? That's part of the reason I love social media so much, is that side of it is just amazing. The being in touch with, I don't know, models or makeup artists that you hadn't seen for 30 years, and suddenly they've got grandchildren and You're not going to be going out to dinner with them the next night, but there's a contact there because there was an emotional bond. Because usually I'm meeting people when they're very young and forming themselves, and with Gaga, I worked with her 2 years at the very beginning. I mean, I hadn't seen her for years, but working with people like that, and Kate Moss and Diana in very formative years, you build very, very strong bonds with people. So there's a huge emotion attached to it.
But you must really understand then what those people are going through at that point. That empathy and that being able to read where they're at, because I'm sure they're terrified. They're putting lots in your hands, literally. Yeah. That must be a real skill.
Well, it's about listening. It's a two-way street. I mean, they could listen to me moan for a couple of hours as well. But it's definitely about reading and absorbing and understanding. It's a very special relationship. I mean, we were on a shoot once a few years ago when someone from the client, I can't remember who it was, who came on the shoot, who hadn't really been on a photo shoot before. We had Kate Moss, and I think we were a couple of hours with hair and makeup. at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this person was going, "Oh my God, how long does it take?" And I was like, she doesn't turn out of bed as Kate Moss at 6 o'clock in the morning. There's a whole process of becoming Kate Moss, becoming Princess Diana, becoming Lady Gaga. The person who jumps out of bed at that time in the morning isn't the one you see on the cover of the magazine. It's character building. It's going to be, who is she today? Is she going to be Brigitte Bardot today? Is she wearing a tiara today? What's the dress like? And should we try on 6 dresses? It's a couple of hours of transforming.
And I guess we all do that to a point, even us mere mortals, there's still
We
that.
do, absolutely. Yeah.
Who am I going to be today? How am I going to show up?
God, I had half an hour decided what color jumper I was going to wear today.
This is
the
audio.
Orange or the orange. Yeah.
But I guess that brings us to talking about your business, Hair by Sam McKnight.
Yeah.
That 50 years of that journeying, that understanding the successes, the mistakes, the people, trying to distill what would have been your time and expertise for sale now into something that kind of captures that people can use themselves. What is it like switching that kind of entrepreneurial brain, the one that got you to the upper end echelons of the industry, to now in something that's selling to consumers, selling to anyone who wants to buy it, rather than just to the people in your chair for those shoots? Are you having to think differently about it? Is there a different kind of learning, a different process?
I can't change. I'm too old to change. I have to adapt though, but I have an amazing team with me now. Because before there were only ever 2 of us, really, kind of me and my right hand man, just sort of he's been with me for 26 years. He's our creative director now. It was just 2 of us navigating everything as it got busier and busier, navigating big teams of sort of 30, 40 assistants for a big show with 100 odd models. So we needed a team for this. Where do I begin? I know what I need to get someone's hair looking right. And I'm all about easy products that are easy to use, that are not going to make your hair look like a carpet, like you've got a ton of product on them. They're going to keep your hair looking like hair. They're going to keep your hair real, but they're going to work. They do what they say on the tin, because I got so fed up with products claiming this and they can do this. And there were so many just not doing that. And I think these days also of social media, you can't really do that because you're going to get called out. So there was a gap there for honesty, integrity, and for products that really worked. And I was finding, when we were working on these 10 years ago, there was a trend for everything to start looking very beige and clinical and boring with too much information on those. So, and I know people really respond to color. Mm-hmm. When I started doing social media and doing the exhibition in the book, I would do loads of talks at Somerset House for busloads of hairdressers who come down from up north and stuff like that. So I saw there was an appetite for what I was doing. And when I was posting hair images on Instagram, which I joined at the very beginning, I saw there was an appetite for what I was thinking, if that makes sense, and I'm a great lover of color. There was a lot of color in the makeup world, but there wasn't a lot of color in the hair world. So we've made our products very, very simple, very easy to understand, slightly naughty names on some of them. And so there's a bit of humor there, but they're very stylish products that look great in someone's handbag or sitting on a shelf. They're not something you want to hide, with absolutely the best ingredients we can find, mixing nature with the latest technology. And also back then, we tried to be as absolutely sustainable as possible, but complete sustainability was so expensive. So we went for recycled and recyclable plastic. And we're now moving forward into much, much more. We have one totally compostable thing in our lines at the moment, and we're looking at more things like that as things become, well, cheaper to use. Because 10 years ago, if you made it out of totally sustainable things, the thing would cost over 100 quid. So that just wasn't going to happen. I'm a great believer. I listened to Coldplay on the radio last year, maybe a couple of years ago now, and it was being touted as the first sustainable tour. And Chris Martin was amazing. And he was saying, look, we're a 50-piece troupe that's going on big jets all over America. We're not sustainable, but we are thinking about it, and we're doing everything we can in the small ways to have less of a footprint. And I thought that was really inspiring because it's hard, it's hard.
We know, values cost money, sustainability costs money. It's
Yeah.
a big responsibility for getting that balance right between making it something that's accessible.
What I know is people want their hair to look good. Having your hair looking good is an incredible mood booster. It's a really easy, simple, relatively expensive way of making yourself feel better. Just having your hair blow dried or trying a new style or something. What we can do now with hair products is quite amazing. What you can do in a few minutes with modern hair products, crucially, without ruining your hair like you used to, is quite incredible. And the technology is moving so fast. It's really, really interesting what's going on. Now, this is where the internet is really incredible and positive, is people doing their own hair and posting the videos. I mean, the variety of it is just, it's incredible. And it's because when I was a kid, everyone was into their hair. I mean, we change our hair every 2 weeks, from perms and colors. We used to color our hair with felt tip pens because bright hair colors hadn't been invented yet. And I think there was quite a couple of decades there where kids weren't really doing much with their hair. And that's completely and utterly changed. And I think I find that really inspiring. I love that. I love that the internet has made that possible.
And have you found, in your own, I guess, excitement or self-worth, self-understanding in that shift from being a craftsperson, somebody who gets a retrospective at Somerset House because of their artistry, to now being a brand, a household brand and a product and a thing that people are playing around with in their own homes, and not many people get to be both. How does that make you feel? Is that something quite exciting for you?
Oh God, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, during COVID, I wasn't doing any photo shoots, obviously, for kind of the good part of a year. That gave me time, in my mid-60s to reflect, which I hadn't really had before, because I was like from one continent to the other, constantly pushed and pulled here and there, happily as well. And I'd been consulting for years with big, companies on their own brands, and I'd always said, oh God, we should do our own thing. And during COVID, it gave me time to really reflect, hone what we're doing, and actually find investment. And because we had launched a few products funded by myself a few years before, and they were doing quite well, but I couldn't afford to take it any further because it is very, very expensive to launch a hair care line. So during COVID, we managed to find a team, or mostly on Zoom, raise investments, and it gave me the space to separate myself from the photo shoots and the fashion show world, because I would never have had that. So I think I may have found that a little overwhelming to be kind of doing both at the same time, but it gave me some space. And I think I remember doing an interview with the Business of Fashion in the first couple of weeks of COVID, and I was very clear. I said, I'm not going to look at this as a negative. I'm that kind of person anyway. I'm going to try and get the positive out of this and make the absolute most of it, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I've got, again, it's seeing the opportunities in it rather than, and listen, I enjoyed my time in my garden as well. So COVID was almost the catalyst to hurry it along, if that makes sense, having some space. And what I took from that was to constantly give myself a bit of space and not be consumed by that business side. We took all the colors of the packaging from flowers in my garden. I was just constantly taking pictures for months, and all the colors came from the garden. So, and quite a lot of the fragrance as well. So it's kind of looking around you, absorbing what's around you, and taking from it something that inspires you.
My final question then, given this amazing career, given this new chapter to it, that's clearly working, people are buying your hair care, they're talking about it. It's out there.
We were the most talked about hair brand on social media and press last year and in February this year, which, I mean, we're a small brand. To be above all those major multinationals it was such a thrill for all of it. There's 9 or 10 people in my team. There's only us, and we have very small budgets. We can't even afford a new fridge, but that's another story. We put our heart and soul into it, and I'm getting so much back from it, because the creative side of it is creating those that content for social media. It's coming up with the packaging, the colors, and the reviews. Honestly, the reviews are just incredible, absolutely amazing. People are really enjoying them, so it's working. I mean, yeah, it's my job and my role is to make people look and feel really good. That's what I want to do, and that's what we seem to be doing. And we just won 2 more awards today, which I was really thrilled about. Today, yeah.
Well, that's just showing off. But given all that, what are you excited about for the next 50 years? Clearly you've.
I'll tell you what I'm enjoying. I'm really enjoying, because for years I've worked for people. Mm-hmm. Now I'm working for myself and my team, and it's a very different feeling. I don't really have to please anyone but myself. Of course, it's always a collaborative effort, and I'm thrilled for those years of training in collaborations, and I'm a great collaborator. But in the end, it's instinctive as well, and I need to be happy with it. We said from the beginning we want to bring some joy into the hair care world, which we have done, and I get lots of joy from that in return, if that makes sense. Because the reviews and the positivity we've had and the response we've had it's been phenomenal. It's great. I think more of the same, with a bit of time off in the garden and a bit of time off to travel to places that I have never been before. Hopefully, ASAP, a huge launch in America.
Okay. Sam McKnight, MBE, thank you so much for being on the Possibility Club.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Possibility Club, Practical Bravery. If you enjoyed this episode, do like, share, review, tell everybody about it. Look in the show notes for all the details of today's guest, stuff we talked about, stuff that's of interest, new things to read, new things to listen to. And if you are running a business or a charity and you are trying to accelerate or improve the impact that you have in the world, if you want to be famous for what you do and what you change rather than just what you sell, then talk to us. alwayspossible.co.uk. We want to hear from you, we want to talk to you, we want to amplify and elevate your ideas, and who knows, we might be able to help you feel more confident and clear about what's next. alwayspossible.co.uk. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new special guest and a new insight on practical bravery in action.
The Possibility Club is an Always Possible podcast. The interviewer was Richard Freeman for Always Possible, and the producer and editor was me, Chris Thorpe Tracy, for Lo-Fi Arts. Have a good week.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Lo-Fi